Why won't we just take the time to listen to our mothers' cries and finally realize what's going wrong? What's going wrong? Why won't we just learn so we can fix these problems for the children? Through the children, we can stop what's going on. What this world don't need is another hungry child, or a crazy pedophile, or a fatherless domicile, or a murderer with a gun, or a public school with no funds, or a landmine, or a hate crime, or... But what this world needs now is a lesson on how to just slow down, and grow now. Back to spirituality, cause this material reality consuming our humanity, causing nothing but pain. Why won't we just take the time to listen to our mothers' cries and finally realize what's going wrong? Why won't we just learn so we can fix these problems for the children? Through the children, we can stop what's going on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meena Natarajan, and I am one of the artistic directors of Pangea World Theatre. I want to acknowledge, first of all, that Pangea World Theatre is located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it is on the traditional and contemporary homeland of the Dakota people. And also, we are so privileged to work with both Dakota and Ojibwe and other First Nations in the Twin Cities. Thank you so much for being here. What you are about to witness is a work in progress called River Souls by Carlton Turner and Dipankar Mukherjee. This is going to be followed by a discussion both on process and the work itself, and also what's happening right now in the world. And this discussion will be co-facilitated by Brandy Turner and myself. River Souls has been a labor of love. It's been a collaboration between artists and place. As we created River Souls, these last few years have been a conversation between our two families and communities. Until March 2020, we traveled back and forth between Mississippi and Minnesota, between our home communities in the US. And then Carlton, Dipankar, and myself also visited India together. When COVID hit in March 2020, we were due to go for a visit to Mississippi, and we canceled. The piece had to be put on hold, and we had to work through the Zoom process. So this moment is hopefully passing with its fits and starts, and we're looking forward to getting back together in person again. And like the river, this piece is going to start flowing once more. It's going to carve out its own space as we use this moment to grow. So we hope this performance here on Zoom gives you much to think about, grounded as it is in personal story and experience. Thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the piece.
We ask you to join us as we are starting with a minute of silence. And so it was on the first night. A blistering spark from a close yet distant fire ignited, and the sky shed its first tear.
As the sky cried, the winds of the spiraling universe folded space and encapsulated the land in a pocket of existence, a part of, but different from the rest of time.
And it was in this different time that a being came to be.
Those tears brought the first cleansing to the lands. They gave birth to the oceans and rivers, seas of tiny beings, just big enough to notice each other, not yet big enough to notice Ganga and Danu,
and Oshun, and Tefnu, and Yemoja, and Anuket.
Mother Spirit sending their children on their journey towards death to make more life, only to send them towards death's shore.
We are their descendants, birthed from the weeping wells of the newborn sky, our bodies, their own oceans and rivers and seas. We are marooned on this rock, spiraling perfectly out of control.
We find ourselves spiraling out of control on this perfect rock, a perfect place of peace, infuriated by the chaos of madmen. This place is changing to keep the balance between these preordained cycles of life and death.
Life, born to die a mortal death, and in that death, birthing more life. An immortal cycle of beginnings and ends. This cyclical prayer of water to dust to water is ancient. It's older than language or sound.
This body of water and dust is primal, older than factions and borders. This breath is mortality, the balance between life and death.
This word, part of the cosmic vibration that called everything into existence.
This breath is also death, the balance between life and the great return, the great surrender of life to the next life. It sees no color, hears no sound. It cannot touch its own spirit. It cannot see into the future, but it can shape it. It cannot understand what it doesn't feel and cannot feel what it doesn't surrender to.
This thought is the beginning, the end, the conclusion, and the afterlife, all locked in an epic battle for.
একটি কথা শুধাই শুধু তোমারে, বলো কোথায় তোমার দেশ, তোমার নেই কি চলার শেষ। ও নদীরে একটি কথা শুধাই শুধু তোমারে, বলো কোথায় তোমার দেশ, তোমার নেই কি চলার শেষ। ও নদীরে।
We're in the home of Bubuli, Dipankar's niece, and immediately my very most favorite person in all of India. Her husband, who's a TB specialist with the WHO, invites his journalist friend over to meet us. This friend, she spoke with a cannon. Her words lobbed like wayward projectiles with very little precision. I sat close enough to her to almost touch her lips. At the same time, I stand in a field miles away watching these word bombs fly overhead. I'm unsure of her target. She languishes on about the ignorance of the US as if it's a living, breathing entity with hands, mouth, and soul. It is not. She goes on and on about the inadequate healthcare this and bland cultural sites that and Americans' overall lack of worldly understanding. With the same weapons, she speaks of both the beauty of the land and her utter contempt for its people. I don't have the words to muzzle her weapon. Well, I have the words. I want to ask her if she knows that the US is not America. if she understands the land is occupied territory, if she knows that what she thinks is the US is actually a melting pot of murdered and kidnapped souls, their rituals, textures, songs, and dances homogenized through the trauma of colonization, I am both incensed and ashamed that this woman, blacker than midnight, resonating a hue darker than my darkest kin's darkest skin, does not understand that the people are the land. And if she can acknowledge the beauty of our mother, then she must also see us, our mother's children. She can't see me though, because she can't see herself in me. But she says she knows Seattle and San Jose, but she don't know Harlem or San Antonio or the South Side of Chicago or New Orleans or Utica. She is long and black, majestic and Indian. Her face, the color of dark chocolate, skin smooth to polished onyx. She's traveled, yet secluded. Doesn't she know that my grandmother's beauty rivals the Gunga itself? Doesn't she know Fannie Lou and Medgar, Hollis Muhammad or Jimmy Baldwin? What about Garza, Colors, or Tometi? She doesn't know Ta-Nehisi, Kaisi, or Jasmine, Nikki, Nina, Josephus, or McInnes, or Sonny. To her, we are as invisible as the reason Indians' national drink is tea. Did she ever even look around her own country? Does she even taste the contradictions on her lips as these words of judgment and contempt roll off the barrel of her mouth? You see, my role as a guest in the house of my friend's family, which became my family with the first sip of masala tea, both offered and ingested, is not to defend the unearned righteousness of the US. It's not to make her see me. She can't see me because she only sees him, the pale boogeyman, the touter of democracy and civilization, the one that uses war to pretend peace, the one that brought night terrors to my ancestors and hers. Poor soul. Does she even remember the last blue sky of Delhi?
A Dalit from the US. These words echoed in my head and circled round and round. My neurons were on fire. The conversation we were in with water warriors, activists, journalists, in a small little concrete room with plastic chairs, books, journals in Gujarati that touched the ceiling, faded into a very dim murmur. Are bhai, ye US ka Dalit hai. These words came out when I introduced Carlton to one of the journalists when we traveled to a small town in Gujarat. Translation: brother, this is a Dalit from the US. My first thought, first time I'm hearing that phrase. Second thought, thank goodness Carlton does not understand Hindi. How the hell do I translate this? How do I explain the word Dalit, or who Dalits are, and how Dalits have been among the most oppressed in India since time immemorial? The mountains that Dalits have to climb, and even then, my friend, my brother Carlton, a Dalit? When I see him on his farm in Mississippi and meet his family of strong matriarchs, they feel like powerful, self-defined folks in spite of the undeniable racism in the US and the systems that oppress Black folks. How can the US, with its power and privilege in the world stage, be compared to India? Then why am I so upset? I have fought most of my life against this terrible caste system that is centuries old. So what's causing this headspin? I hear voices conversing in Hindi, English, Gujarati without really taking in the words. Now Carlton and Meena are laughing at something our new friends are saying, and no, I'm going to regret this moment. I'm probably going to be told with relish by my two companions, this is the best conversation we have ever had in our trip. The monologues in my head now take a turn. How can any American be compared to the outcasts of India, Dalits? Would the majority of Dalits ever be able to travel by plane to another country? There is a tiny blue square document that confers a world of power and privilege, the American passport. Would Dalits, many of whom do not even have an Indian passport, and an African American carrying a US passport, meet the same treatment while crossing borders? Look, Dalits are rejected by society.
Well, so are Black folks.
Dalits are forced into the most menial jobs in this society.
Well, sounds like the same lack of opportunity in the US for poor Blacks and other people of color.
Dalits are invisible in India.
And you think people see us in the US as anything more than a threat?
Dalits have been oppressed for centuries.
So have we. You know, when Martin Luther King went to India, Indians referred to him as the Dalit of the US. I guess I'm in mighty fine company, man.
Okay, great. I'm truly going crazy. I'm having this imaginary conversation with Carlton while he's in the room. The journalist parted from us with much affection. I heard myself saying goodbye and thanking him. When we got into our rented car to leave for the Narmada river estuary, I was in a daze. This one is going to give me something to chew about. A Dalit from the US.
Relax. Let your mind flow like the river. Let your mind travel to the last moment of exhale.
Breath and water. The water that contains the ashes of my ancestors. We are forever connected with water and breath. The rivers of time, you connect us with times gone by, with people gone by, with memories of the past, bringing it to the shores of the present where we stand.
River, you quench, you wash, you consecrate, you calm, you nourish, you carry, you birth, you witness.
Yes, you witnessed. Yes, you can provide testimony. Yes, you were present. What then provokes you to flow? Why did you carry my friend Carlton's blood from West Africa? Did you not hear the cries of the innocent? Did you not hear the chains of injustice? Why did you not refuse to flow? Or did the wheels of commerce coerce you? Did you witness, O River Narmada, as you claimed the entire villages, submerged temples with their idols, once thriving crossroads, all underwater? You swallowed up farmland, ending livelihoods. Did you witness the suicide of farmers who cast themselves into your dark womb? River, tell me, Tell me, please, did you stand witness? Did you know that there were women standing in your waters protesting as you rose inch by inch up to their chins?
You house devastations and injustices, celebrations and rituals. You carry messages from the mountains to the sea and back again. You are nourishment. You shapeshift. You are death. You witness.
River, you teach me not to stop. You teach me to breathe. You teach me to embrace different terrains, some smooth, some rocky. You teach me to sustain, to grow, to live, to die, to relive again. River, you teach me to embrace the cosmos. Then what? Tatha kim? What next? I stop, I breathe again, and flow again.
The first time I was baptized intentionally was, I don't remember the date. I don't remember if I was moved by the Holy Spirit or by the force of expectation. My mother was baptized at this very church, and my grandmother before her, and her mother, and so on, back to the beginning of, I don't know. The history is not so clear for Europeanized indigenous Africans. From first contact to transatlantic slave trade, the post-Columbus confluence of bodies, stolen, enslaved, free, bought, sold, forced, coerced, where this ritual surfaced in my ancestral memory was virtually impossible to determine. All I knew is that I was next, and the force of my mother and grandmother's expectation for me to be born again into this Christian faith and become one of the chosen few devoted to the afterlife was too much for me to bear. And so I moved. The pastor made the altar call as a deacon placed the chair in the center of the front row. My young, slender legs almost instinctively began walking up to the front of Page Grove Missionary Baptist Church. And I've seen people do it before. It is kind of what we are born to do. Dedicate our lives to the Lord. Sacrifice the world that we knew to the goodness of God and be washed in the blood of the Lamb in exchange for the promise of another life in an endless time. What I remember of that day is that I was dressed in my white as I made to feel like John the Baptist as I walked down through the crowd of believers singing, "Take me to the water. Take me to the water. Take me to the water to be baptized." The Reverend spoke some words, many of them I'd heard before, many times again, as I've witnessed others seek to be transformed by this ritual. My hands across my chest, the back of my small, curly, jet black afro cupped as I am dipped backwards into the depths of the pool, submerged into the cool spring water and back up again. Over in less than a second, my preteen body waiting for the transformation to take hold and make me the new me. Looking through the same eyes that I had just a moment before, the mother's humming of hymns sounding just as sweet as before, but no more. Did I need to be dipped again? Did it not keep me under long enough? I didn't feel different, transformed. I felt just like the kid I was, unsure and confused about the power of the practice. the strength of my own faith? Was the process broken, or was I? Maybe the pastor was too old for it to work. Maybe he had used up all of his tickets providing passages to the souls on that train to glory, and I was just too far back in the line. I don't know. I shook your brother's hand, broke bread with your family in the most sacred of spaces. I've seen the sadness in your eyes as you remember your mother's smile.
I've seen the sadness in your eyes. In this moment of time known, has it been lived already? It's as if known, as if recognizable, the instant embrace, quick and less foreign.
I've witnessed your heart swell as you walk with the stride of your ancestors on the streets of your homeland. I've kissed the cheeks of your wife, your nieces, watched the sunrise peep through the embrace of you and your wife, and I've sipped spirits and spoke dreams with you beneath southern skies.
I have knowledge of your history, richness of lineage and broken lines, bloody and cruel. Yet your search ignites mine.
We have fought and defended the dignity of our people, our memories, our humanity in the face of those that refuse to see us as yet fully developed humans.
We have shared a desire for a love-fueled world with our closest of friends and challenged the systems to either adjust or be erased. I see you. What now?
I see you. What now? I can't carry the collective weight of a people so beautiful that the sun blushes at the hue of their skin. I'm not equipped to speak for the thousands of dialects so nuanced that the syncopation of their words keep time for the spinning of the universe. I can't.
Now is all we have. I stand with you.
I stand with you, as my ancestors did already.
Many lives will I travel to bathe myself in your rich culture, to know, to unlearn, to appreciate, to commit.
I am yet one drop in a sea of reflections, ancient and unrecognized, unafraid of the power lying beneath the surface of the deep.
The beating in my chest and the rhythm of my breath and a constant prayer for the grace and mercy and resilience and love and one day this too shall end. I know who I am. What now?
Listen, man, I can only speak for me. My heart, my soul, I have one voice. I am one drop in an ocean of sound, filled with the wails of mourning mothers and the laughter of children and the mayhem of men.
And I can only speak for me. One voice in this vast landscape, this place that I'm still struggling to call home.
Man, we are up against centuries of lies. When we're seen together, it is as if it's the first time Africa and Asia have met. But our relationship is as ancient as the land. My people's blood is your people's blood.
The gait of our bare feet in dust and mud, the same as yours. The swing of our hips and the thumping of our drums, part of the same vibration.
Our pain, our joy, our love, the same. We are one.
Tathakim. Brother, what then?
I don't know. What now?
Thank you so much. So we are going to begin our discussion. And thank you, Carlton and Dipankar, for that beautiful performance. That was really moving. And I know I'm the director, but it was really beautiful to just listen to. While I was sitting right here next to Dipankar. So we're going to begin the discussion, and I want to introduce my co-facilitator and co-conversationalist, Brandy Turner from SIP Culture. Her bio is in the chat. And as much as we co-created this work with Carlton, Brandy was in every way a part of our relationship building. She was our co-conspirator as we built the piece. One of the most hospitable people I know. Amazing cook, amazing, just an all-round amazing person. And Brandy welcomed us into her family and home with an open heart. Sharing food, experiences. We met members of Carlton's family. She is family to us. So welcome, Brandy. And also thank you, Carlton, Dipankar, again for that performance. And I'm going to ask Brandy actually to ask us some of the first questions, because we do want to talk to you about process and other things around the show before we, and also have a discussion about this particular time, because it's such a loaded time in our history. So Brandy.
Yes. Thank you, Meena. Yes, beautiful sharing with both Dipankar and Carlton, and under your direction, Meena. Thank you for that very warm welcome. This is a really incredible experience to be a part of. So I think that when I go through some of these questions that I have for you, you all will witness how rich this experience has been. So my first question for you all is, how did River Souls start for you? And either of you can take it first. I'll take it with Meena and Dipankar. How did River Souls start?
Well, I think that, it's kind of like a joint conversation. Carlton has a story and we have ours. And I think the seeds of River Souls began when Carlton and Nick Sly with Mondo Bizarro and Carlton and Maurice came to Minneapolis, and they did something called Race Peace back in 2007. Isn't that right, Carlton?
Yes.
And Race Peace was this exploration of race, and so we really invited our community, and our community is extremely diverse. And we invited our community in to participate in this workshop, this exploration, and so I think we were the first stop for race peace, and also so that was one experience of what race meant, and that began our conversation about race. But our relationship goes way back to I think the American Festival Project, where I first met Carlton. So that began a conversation with Carlton that began this really close-knit kind of friendship. that began this, and so we really took our time to develop the relationship. But I would love to turn it over to you, Carlton, because I know you also have your story about how we began this particular piece.
Yeah. So, when you meet your people, and it's like you meet people, and then it's like you've known each other for years, for generations, and it was like that when I first met Meena and Dipankar. But the story for me, when River Soul starts, I actually walked into a conversation in a diner in Denver, Colorado, and the two of them were having breakfast. We were at this conference. I think it was probably 2008 when that happened, or 2000, something around that. It was a big election year, and I think Meena was trying to get Dipankar to step back onto the stage, to come out of the director's chair and back into the performance square. And I just happened to be meeting for breakfast that morning, and somehow I got caught up and used as leverage in this negotiation. And so Meena turned to Dipankar and said, well, if Carlton turned to Dipankar, not to Carlton, she said, well, if Carlton agrees to perform with you, would you perform? And he was like, yeah. I think he was like, Carlton's he's not gonna do this. So he figured that was his way out. And he said, yeah. So then she turned and asked me, she said, would you perform with him? I was like, yeah, and then it began, okay, so what is this gonna be about? It became real. And of course, as Meena says, it became an extension of the work we were already doing around race, identity, around culture, around relationships, and just trying to figure out how we work together without losing ourselves and without aligning ourselves with this idea of whiteness, to kind of retain our cultural specificity while engaging in cross-cultural relationship development.
Mm-hmm. So I have to shift that back to you, Dipankar, to give you some space to respond and hear your account of the story of how River Soul started. And then also, if you don't mind, sharing a little bit about what your thoughts were when Meena leaned into Carlton and asked him, did you think that your plan had worked? What did you think? So please share with us.
Thank you, Brandy. Thanks, Carlton. Thanks, Meena, for this really. It's an opportunity that touches my soul. I never do anything which my soul does not desire it. So when Meena was saying, what really made me want to do this is really the politics of race. That it's something that, and then with somebody like Carlton, Carlton, Sir Carlton Turner, to be on stage with Carlton, I would just to be in the same room, I would do anything. But really, the politics of race and the historicity of race in the U.S. soil was really my motivating factor. And then, of course, I will only take the journey with dear friends and where there's a relationality. So to me, those are the factors. And Meena was directing it. And she's quite a hard director. So, but Carlton will be in the room, and I know that whatever we are doing, the search will be authentic and deep. So, really, those are the reasons why I consider this a privilege.
Mm-hmm. What was the process like? How did you all decide to really approach this body of work once you were locked in? How did y'all approach it?
So I think, one of the things, we actually started exchanging books to read. We also were like, we also started really just talking about it from each of our own perspectives. And, and started talking about it like from both the South Asian, from our particular, where we stand, right? And from our particular ancestry and the place that we come from. As, Dipankar and I are immigrants. We are from South Asia. Over here, we consider ourselves South Asians. In India, we would say we're just Indians. And then also for us, what we really noticed was the lack of relationships between these two communities, or the fact that communities are so siloed. And so, at the same time, we started reading books. We started reading writers who were writing about this topic. and exchanging books and just having deep, authentic conversations with each other about just where we were coming from. And I feel like those conversations then led to us creating pieces, but it was the process was very slow. We took our time because this is not an easy topic to talk about. It's not easy to talk about race, and it's not easy to talk about, and especially with, and also another thing that we did was traveling to each other's communities. So traveling to Mississippi, seeing where you both live, in rural Mississippi, seeing what happened. I mean, I feel like some incidents that really just struck me so deeply based on were some of your experiences and just touched us very deeply. And sometimes something that happens there makes you see your own privilege as, so just that realization and realization of how, I know Dipankar can talk to an incident we had in South Africa, that happened. That really kind of like shocked us a little bit, and we were really like a little shaken by it, and which made us want to work on this project in the United States with somebody that we dearly loved as well. So I'm just going to stop there and let both of them answer that question as well.
I think I would love to hear from the both of you about that, because I remember that it wasn't like when you met, you knew that y'all were going to do River Souls together. There was an instant connectivity and relatability between each other. You mentioned, I remember like the sharing of reading materials and recommending different things. So yes, if you could tell, even more about what that process was like for you that got you to the place of wanting to discover and pursue River Souls.
Carlton, you want to
go? Yeah, so I think when we started with Race Peace there, we kind of began. We knew that we were already doing some work on a journey. So even before River Souls came into fruition, the evolution from Race Peace was like, we should continue this work in Minneapolis and Mississippi and continue this exchange around conversation about race. And so we wrote up a proposal idea called Race North and South on the Mississippi, because the Mississippi River was the thing that connected us. Minneapolis, literally lakes, where Meena and Dipankar live is just a couple of minutes from the Mississippi River. And we here in Utica are about, 25 minutes from the Mississippi River. And so the Mississippi River, if you all left your house, got on a boat and came down, we could meet you, down here on this end. So we're thinking about how the river was the first real connecting point. It connected so much of the North and the South, of the East and the West. The Mississippi River became, once that body of water, once they found a way to go across that body of water, it opened up the entire country to the exploitation that was only happening at that point on the East Coast and in the South. So I think we saw that North and South on the Mississippi as being a connector point, and beginning to think about the river as a conduit for how ideas travel, how people travel, how cultures travel. So the river, in essence, begins to shape this new culture, this new American culture. And so thinking about the Mississippi as one of the great rivers around the world, another one being the Nile River, and then the other being the Ganga River, the River Ganges. And so having that, African, American, Indian connection of water and how influential that water was in the early development of civilizations, but also how it continues to be this place that connects us. So the water became a metaphor that connected all of our conversations around the transfer of culture, and a metaphor for how culture is shaped and how identity is shaped. And so once we kind of honed in on that, River Souls as an idea began to just kind of evolve kind of organically.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
and then we met and wrote. Sorry, Randy. And then whenever we would meet, ever so often, and we knew that this is not a surface level conversation. This has historicity, because of course we are meeting in the room, but actually we are telling the stories of our people, So it demanded the integrity of search and rigor of investment. And so we would meet in various rooms multiple times a year. And of course, they both are writers, so the standard of the room of writing was way up there. And I'm primarily a director, and I can deal with good writing, but to be able to produce work, it has its own demand and integrity. And so we used to write, we used to read to each other. Then we wrote a lot, some good, some bad, some to be, that was Meena's job, some to keep, some to throw away. And we really drew on the wall, the rivers flow. And then we placed our thoughts on the river's time flow. And then we went to India. When we went to Mississippi, then visiting your family, going to the church and seeing, right from I still remember right when we're in the church, and we have always gone to church. We all have gone to missionary schools, but here a church, which you said your grandfather helped build the church, and we are sitting there, and as we sat down very quietly, the whole mass was going on, and I remember Carlton's mother shouted from the stage, "Thanks for taking care of my baby in India." I said, "Oh my God, this is like back home." So those moments were really portals to enter into this vastness, which was familiar, and it's all waiting to be familiarized. That's what I felt. I never felt foreign at any moment, that, oh, I don't know. But it was, oh my God, there are echoes of familiarity, and it just went deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think getting that was some of the processes. And then Carlton came over here and stayed with us. Then we ultimately went to India. We wanted to show Carlton where we have grown up, where our families reside. We did a lot of work in India. So those were some of the processes.
I love how you all share that and talk about the connection with the rivers, and even the river flowing, guiding your process of laying out the experiences that we all have been really building together over this period of time. I'm curious, through the processes that y'all have gone through, what are some experiences, even incidents that maybe took place that maybe inspired some writing pieces from the both of you? Carlton, if you would speak to one, and I'd love to hear from you, Dipankar, as well.
Yeah, so you definitely heard too. One of the things is we basically began a study group, and so we were studying all the things we knew about India and Africa and Americans, and trying to figure out also what we wanted, what already existed. So we knew first and foremost that this idea of South Asians or Indians, however it wants to be framed, and Blacks or African Americans was not a new concept. And so part of the discovery of the history of the relationship was really important. It was important to not position ourselves as doing something that's groundbreaking, but that we're continuing a relationship that is as old as time. And that became its own thread of discovery. But you heard a couple of stories tonight, specifically. So one of the things that connected us was our religious experiences and being baptized as young boys. And so we began writing about what our baptismal experiences were. You heard my story tonight. You didn't hear Dipankar's, but Dipankar has a similar story. So much of our work is about reflections, is about mirroring the experiences, what it means to grow up Indian, what it means to grow up Black in America, and a lot of the things that connect us, that make us the same. And another story that you heard from my perspective was the meeting the woman, the journalist, at Bubuli's house, and the discrimination, the kind of blatant discrimination that she displayed towards not just myself, but to Meena. There was just no respect. It was like as if we didn't exist, we weren't even in the room. And I rarely have experienced that, even from white people in America. Like there's even something about being in Mississippi where you know, white folks don't care for you. A lot of white folks don't care for you, but they acknowledge your existence. They do acknowledge that you're in the room. You know, they'll at least look at you. This woman wouldn't even look at us. And it was so bizarre because her skin was as dark as my shirt. And so when you put these two concepts together with the way that race develops in America around skin tone and the color of your skin, and to see this woman who was in, you know, as black as midnight, to look at me or look down on me, not even look at me, not even, you know, it was just really fascinating. It was we talked about that for several days after that incident. It was actually the beginning of our journey. It was one of the first experiences we had on our journey outside of Meena and Dipankar's home community of Chennai.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I remember her, right? I don't know, it is so, you're in two places. One is that you're conscious that here's my friend, I want my friend to be treated with respect. And here, I'm so embarrassed that somebody, you know, from so termed my community. I mean, you know, you have to reimagine the word community. That's why, you know, she just came. It was a monologue for about 45 minutes. She just looked at me and she spoke. You know, she had no questions. She had no. She did not even pause. It was all her bile, and I just kept looking at her, waiting to intervene. Then after some time, I just gave up. I said, "Will I meet her ever again in my life?" I then consciously no. You know, so that I remember that moment, you know, and moments like that. Then there are other moments in life, you know, the good points are, you know, seeing family. Like in India, when we make friends, we make friends with the family. It's never, you know, we go home, we go to people's homes and we know their nephew, niece, uncle, aunt, grandfather, grandmother, and not necessarily joint families. You know, we just get to know them. The family knows you, family embraces you. And like, for example, when Carlton, you know, there was a time when I had left the city and Carlton was still in Chennai, where my family lives. And when I came back from Calcutta, my brother said that, oh, Carlton was here. And, you know, and we spent a lot of time, Carlton had dinner. And I just felt so, you know, emotional that's how, you know, the fact that he did not, I don't think I even did not know that Carlton was visiting my family, you know, when I was not in town. He went there, he got to know my brother, who's crazy, and you know, he got to know my nephew, my sister-in-law. And, you know, I think there were so many moments of stitching, you know, like when we came to your house, the way, you know, Brandy, we were welcomed, you know, by you, you know, I never thought, I used to take hospitality for granted. That people are hospitable, because I grew up in a house where, you know, people just kept coming and dropping by, whether it's my sisters and friends or my friend, my parents' friend. But that was not what we became more and more distant from it as we educated, where we went to college here and settled here. But then when we went to Mississippi, it was like, oh, we are home, right? Back home, really. And which was so, really, I mean, it was milestones of familiarity, you know, that just, and so it just went deeper, you know, that's how it went deeper.
Yeah. So Brandy, I have a question for you, which is, I'm like, because you've been a part of most of our conversations, and even I'm sure that even if you weren't in the residency with us, for example, in the South Dallas, in Dallas, for example, at SMU, you know, with Clyde Valentine, who hosted us. But you probably heard when Carlton went back home and told you, you know, talked to you, or told you about what we were doing. And then in Mississippi, you were part of our conversations. We would have conversations over the dinner table, and you hosted us formally, you hosted us informally in your home. You've been part of this deep relationship building in the last few years. So I would just love to know what this process has been like for you.
This process has been really rich and very intimate. And if I can just speak plainly, it's been beautiful and fun as well. So, you know, to learn about your culture and then see the commonalities that that we have between us has really actually made this whole experience, this relationship between all of us, like just smooth and seamless, even when we're having really, sensitive conversations about things that we're facing each day. So, I mean, it's been incredible. I mean, this, like we've said, this is family. And it's felt like that, from the beginning. I think, Carlton just said something really powerful. It's, continuing a relationship that is as old as time. Mm-hmm. And so it's a treat. It's really, it's a real treat, and it forces me to, to really think critically about the state that we're in even today in this moment. I know that like the work has evolved. We've all gone through this experience with the pandemic, but even, simultaneously with your community where you live now in Minneapolis, that was so deeply affected across the world with, the murder of George Floyd. And when we're talking about all the intricacies of race, this work and this collaboration has been about artists in place. So I'm curious, just putting questions back to you all, how did this time affect you in terms of this work in relation to the present moment that we're all living in?
Well, the present moment, May 26th, I remember that date and I never want to forget it, May 25th, May 26th, when Brother Floyd, was murdered here. Then our street where we live, where we work, Lake Street, where our community is, where multiple immigrants, I mean, it just erupted. Against the injustice, and then we know what happened, and that gave me, I mean, one thing that came out of it was a tremendous amount of strength and redefining the word solidarity, because out in our street, right in front of where we live, Lake Street, there were supremacists that came and they burnt our buildings. We were literally standing guard, protecting our stores, our homes, the only grocery store. Otherwise, there's a food desert. They burn gas stations, But it was an intergenerational voice that was raised. We had, people of color, white folks, elders, youngsters, kids, parents walking with 5-year-old kids, on this street. We were just standing for justice, and we could not get back where our work is concerned. We could not get back to business as usual, because there was nothing usual about it. So, even our mission statement, our board met together and we shifted our mission statement that, of course, the ideas were the same, but there was an urgency and immediacy to all our work and what needed to happen, and to take lead in standing next to, behind, in front, beside justice and embracing justice, and in multiple ways, all Pangea artists, all our staff members, our board members, like we all immediately responded through our art. And so it became a very pivotal moment, and what's happening to the world now. And at a time when, when we are broken into various segments, I think this work connects us.
Yeah.
And go ahead. I was going to ask you.
And I want to say that I'm sure that, that's why I'm actually, I'm in a sense anxious to get back to this work. I feel like these 2 years with the COVID pandemic, I mean, I know that you all have been really busy during this time, and so have we. And at the same time, we've been absorbing what's happening to us individually. So I'm sure that this is going to affect the work and make it richer as we go forward. I don't know in what way. I think we'll have to get into a room together and look at this moment and see how that comes into the work as well.
Absolutely. We're really grateful for what we know that we're all already building together, because we're putting some dates on the calendar now.
That's
we're finding
correct.
That that it's becoming safer to be in space with each other. So so I think that it's really going to kind of help to inform what y'all are thinking about when when you think that you might want to premiere this work.
I mean,
there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
You know, I think what you heard tonight were just a very small snippet of just a few stories. There's so much more. We didn't talk a lot about it, but the piece is informed by the flow of the river. So it has a headwaters. It deals with dams. It deals with the estuaries. It deals with the marshes and the river banks. And so the stories and all of the different writings that we've done are representative of the various pieces of the river. So, you know, that's just a piece about process, but I'll let the Meena director talk more about timeline.
Yeah, no, I mean, we really do have a lot of work to do. And like Carlton said, our dramaturgy is actually the way the piece is going to flow is actually informed by the river itself. And so I think we discovered that structure during one of our meetings and decided that was going to be what the structure was going to be, that we wanted another, that we couldn't have the way plays work in this country, that we had to look for an alternate way of expressing ourselves and for the arc of the piece. And I think that I'm hoping that we'll have something for this October, that this summer and October we'll create something that will move this piece forward. And then by hopefully it'll premiere sometime next year. For in the wholeness. I don't know. I'm probably being ambitious because we are like I said, we both are in opposite sides of the country. But I think this is a really important work. It's really important for us to actually explore at this time when things are so hot. And yeah.
I appreciate you all tackling that very audacious question with an audacious response. I think it's we want to field some questions from the audience. So we've got some questions that we're going to put out there. But one of the things that I do want to acknowledge, while we're all sitting here and experiencing this moment virtually via Zoom, it is also important to just mention and share the many experiences that we have shared over the last couple of years, even through, this pandemic, that this relationship has been ongoing. We would meet Sunday mornings virtually, sometimes in our house coats and our comfortable Afghans and things of that. And so we're constantly talking and keeping up with what's going on in each other's families. So we're not picking back up anywhere. We're present in the moment. And so I think we're just getting ready to be together in space. So is it okay if we move on to just maybe putting some questions out there to the audience?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So we're thinking about ways that we can really scale interpersonal relationships to amass cultural power together. And so that's something that, we really would like to really explore and really think about, especially as we raise some of, the things that have been part of our experience since the onset of River Souls and just the development to present day. How do we scale interpersonal relationships to amass cultural power?
So,
anybody particularly want to take that?
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know that anybody can take that question, but
right.
I think it's the question that was the kicker that started off this idea. We initially began having a conversation about the African-American community and the South Asian community. And I think it was maybe we had met 2 or 3 times and it was clear that we can't represent those communities. Like we can only represent who we are. And that's when you get to the end of the piece that we read tonight, where it's like, I can only speak for myself. I can only be a representative of who I am, because to try to carry this idea of what Black is, which is as boundless and as bountiful as the seas, is a ridiculous notion. Part of what my challenge was coming into this conversation was thinking about the way that Blacks and South Asians interact in my own community. And this this transactional way of relationship that it exists upon. It's like it's a merchant customer type of relationship. And so how do we deepen that practice? How do we get beyond the transaction into actually knowing each other and being connected in the most intimate and real ways that are connecting us by blood and by kin, and making kin of each other. And so that to me was, when we think about power, the power is in the connectivity of the people, the relationships of the people. And there's very little power in a transactional relationship. The power is in transformational relationships. So I think that for me, the question became, how do we advance transformational relationships across cultural barriers? And I don't know that we have an answer to that question. I know that I don't have an answer to it, but I do have a body of practice that allows me to engage with people of different faiths, of different cultures, of different backgrounds, in an authentic exchange that isn't based on transactions. And to me, that's the only key that I know to unlock the true power of intercultural relationships.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the processes that we did as we were going from place to place, we were in Philadelphia, we were also in Dallas, Texas, at SMU, and what we did was we gathered together people to have a conversation. And actually, one of those first conversations was in Minneapolis between African Americans and South Asians, and it was a truly deep conversation that happened between, and some of our friends had never actually, though they knew African Americans in their community, they said hi, and it was very surface, but they hadn't actually had a deep relationship with people, and so it was the first time actually that they were together having this amazing, having a conversation. And I think for me, it's also very important, Dipankar and I were talking about it today, and it's very important that we don't re-traumatize folks through these conversations. Like when we have South Asians saying, "Oh, I've never met somebody before, and I was in India and I didn't know, and my idea of America, the United States was this." That we also want to make sure that we don't re-traumatize African Americans who've been through so much in this country, like right from the time of their birth. And so we are very so for me, it's been a constant process of how do we curate these conversations so that we really hold people respectfully, so that we do it in a way that's completely loving and kind, and at the same time people can speak their authentic truth. And so we have to get the right people in the room. That there's no doubt for me about that. We also have to get the kinds of conversations we need to have. We have to steward. It has to be facilitated. I think I realized that after that first conversation that we had in Minneapolis, and so I think we're learning how to talk. So just even as we have been, gotten to know each other and had the conversation, things have not always been smooth. It's, we've also had our rough spots, which is common for human beings. But we're also, learning how to steward those conversations with a much larger group. And, Philadelphia was where we actually had people from completely diverse communities. Hmong, we had, Asian American, African American, South Asian. And, we were able to figure out, so through workshops, through, theater is such an amazing space to have those healing conversations. And through that space, we were able to actually get very deep in those conversations. And so we look forward to having more conversations, stewarding conversations maybe in Mississippi as well, so that we can bring more folks together. And I feel like that's what we need to do, bring more, through this vehicle of this performance, bring more and more people together so that we can actually authentically talk to each other and move the relationship, as Carlton said, beyond the transactional to a relational conversation where people want to actually get to know each other,
And I would like to add that, when we sit in a circle in Pangea to create work, Brandy, we are very clear, and now Pangea is over 26 years old, and we consciously bring people, with, like the term Pangea, very consciously, people in the room are curated they're from all different walks of life. And among people of color, there are some common intersectionalities. One, everybody knows how to talk to the center, the centrality of power. Everybody knows how to negotiate that. and still sometimes the conversation of diversity or is very much in North America between black and white.
Right. Right.
And so the rest of us, depending on the vote numbers, you get counted or not counted. So it was so interesting that we all realized we know how to negotiate with the centrality of power. But then if the conversation shifts, like what we have been trying to do in Pangea, that if we collaborate, if the Asian American collaborate with the African American, collaborate with the Latinx, collaborate with the LGBTQ community. Now, if the solidarity of the circumference of the circle builds, that is power, and that is moving forward. And then with or without the permission or waiting to be a part of the invited guest list, we have invited each other to this alternate room where there are multiple doors. And to me, and we have experienced it, we live it, for the past 26 years and more, even back home, because back home in India, it might not be race, but it is religion, it is, language, it is dialects. And unfortunately, even back there, I mean, now, the political sort of fascism of a majority culture is shifting the India that I always held with pride, which was secular, with different faiths, different religion, different accents, So I think the need of this work is absolutely important in this country and in any country. I mean, we're at the brink of a third world war, and the context being land and and people. I mean, that Carlton's beautiful piece where Carlton says the people are the land, and instead of just strengthening the boogeyman to justify power, I think we are really shifting the conversations. And
right. I did want to ask you something also, Brandy. I mean, I feel like what's happening in Mississippi right now is so disturbing, right? I mean, we have that, and you and I were talking about how you were talking about intimacy and authenticity of relationships, but we also spoke a little bit about what's happening in Mississippi right now with, how and we also spoke about the Supreme Court nomination process. I mean, I feel like what's happening with African Americans in this country, even in Minneapolis, people are getting killed all the time. Even after George Floyd, there have been several murders in Minneapolis. There's been so much violence. And then, like right now, the critical race theory is being attacked in Mississippi. And so I just wanted to talk to, and then books are being banned, etc. So it's like, and this is becoming a national conversation in the South. This is really true. So I just wanted to actually ask you your opinion about, this for you, like, what does it mean for work like this in terms of solidarity? Because Dipankar brought up the whole idea of solidarity. And I know that we are in solidarity with your folks, but what is it like? What should people do? Like, right? And what should people who say they're in solidarity do in this situation?
Well, I think, one of the things that, this kind of work, in my opinion does is it challenges this mainstream narrative that's trying to be shaped about race. And it really exposes, when talking about the intimacy, it exposes what is real and what is authentic, and takes it out of one person's concept or the politics of it. It makes it something that's very real, where it puts humanity forward. And I think that's what's happening in this particular body of work, but also this relationship that is continually being nurtured. And so I think that's what's important. You mentioned, critical race theory and how that, here in Mississippi, has just made it to where there's certain, the conversation is now, pulling certain books, out of libraries and things of that nature. And it's like, these things are not even in the same schools that they're same libraries and schools that they're trying to pull these books out of. Critical race theory isn't being taught in in elementary and middle schools and high schools even. So it's interesting how race is being shaped and formed to not have the conversation. And I think what River Souls does in this relationship is it says exactly why it's important to be in conversation with one another.
Yeah, critical race theory becomes the boogeyman, that we talked about. Yeah. It's non-existent, but the idea that it might exist terrifies people, and it terrifies power, because what critical race theory does is what it actually does. Critical race theory, not what's happening in secondary school or elementary school. Critical race theory is a way to look at the development of the country, not through the white gaze, but through the gaze of the other. And it says that what you're saying about the founding of this country is your perspective. This is the experience of my people and the communities that I come from. And that experience is valid. And that experience is important, because without that experience, then we only hear your side of the story or your perspective about what has taken place. And that's not a complete narrative. That's not the circle. That's not the fullness of what has happened. And when you engage in the story work, the circle work, everybody's story is valid. And so in this idea of just the process of the circle is counterintuitive to this idea that there's a white-centered framework, or that everything has to come from this ultra conservative view or this ultra American perspective, and that only white perspectives are identified or classified as being American. So, and critical race theory challenges that. It says, no, there's all types of Americans. American comes in so many different flavors that if you're only looking at that one flavor, then you actually don't know what America tastes like. And so, and that's the beauty of it. And that's where I think this work continues to offer hope and possibility.
So I have one more question, and maybe we can slowly move to wrapping up. That is, and if you have any questions, please put it in the Facebook page. We'll get to you. But we have lots of comments, but we don't have questions yet. So we'd love to hear something from you. If you have anything of the actors or myself or Brandy, we'd love to see that. Just wanted to also riffing off what you just said, Carlton, everything is so much more volatile right now, right? I mean, we know that, like we just mentioned, the critical race theory conversation and legislation in Mississippi and other places. We know what's happening in schools. This is a culture war that's being fought, everywhere around the country in different ways. And so is what we are seeing, everything being so volatile, is that a reflection of a shift in the positive direction? I mean, I guess we don't know, we're not soothsayers, but at the same time, I would love to hear your perspective on that as well, both your perspectives and Brandy's on that as well.
I was going to say, this is something that like we've kind of been talking about too, a little bit, is like, it speaks to something when there is a, I don't know if I should say like a fire or an awareness that has people talking about it, and there's a pushback. So that means, if there's a pushback, you're pushing against something. So that's people wanting to have this conversation and making a stand, that there is another side, to these stories. There's multiple sides. It's multifaceted. So, I think it's incredibly relevant and really important.
Yeah, I think, this is the cycles that change comes in. It's waves. It's progress. It's, as they say, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, whatever, however the saying goes. And we know that in the United States, after the Civil War, came this period of Reconstruction, in which, it was just, there was opportunity for the descendants of enslaved Africans to become part of an American society. And they were elected to political office. They began to have financial power. They began to govern their communities and their schools. They began to participate in life at an enormous rate. And their participation was good for America. Mm-hmm. And what we saw that followed that was a period of lynching that took place, Jim Crow and the Black laws and lynchings that took place. Listen, yesterday, an anti-lynching bill, the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill was passed. Mm-hmm. It had been up for vote more than 200 times. Wow. 200 times. So the people that have been elected to lead this country have, for decades, have said, no, that is not important enough for us to pass, when they've passed all sorts of insane and ridiculous laws. So the pushback, it always comes after progress. Mm-hmm. I think the current pushback that we see is definitely connected to the election of Barack Obama and the idea that a person with Black lineage and heritage can hold the highest office, not just in the United States, but the president of the United States is seen as the highest office in the world. Mm-hmm. And that does something to people who want us to believe that Black people are inferior, that we're less than, that we're not capable of, and for him to be in that office and to do what he did at the level that he did it, and to not be scandalized, to not have, like those are all things that have generated this kind of this pushback and the browning of the country, the rise in Latino community, in the population, the number of immigrants, all of these things they require to be pushed back upon, or else it will change the country, forever. And they don't want that. Mm-hmm.
The word re-traumatize, we hear that, and at the same time, work like what we are doing is also re-beautify and reroute compassion, mm-hmm. and reroute love and reroute solidarity and reroute power. It's my standing next to, my Black brothers and my Black sisters and my Black friends, is standing in accountability to the world that I envision. Yes, just like the way all we have in the script, there multiple times, both Carlton says it and I said, all we have is the present. All we have is the present. Yet the present, if we stand in solidarity, is impacting a future which is beautiful, which is hopeful. And to me, that's where Gandhi says that in the history of mankind, no toxic energy, no dictator has ever lasted time. So, in the consciousness of time, these sort of negative, transactional, myopic legislature, like banning, critical race theory. Critical race theory is an ocean of truth. What the hell will you ban in it? I mean, if you really see the context of it, the consciousness of it. So to me, it's a moment of hope. It's a moment of solidarity. It's a moment of accountability. It's a moment which is beyond the shadow of your own nose. I mean, if we are accountable to the word solidarity, and I feel a lot of hope at present because I have to have it. Because when I look at Tristan, that tiny little child of both of you, to me, the world that he is going to grow up in will be 10 times more smoother than the world we are sharing now. And that's my commitment. And that's why I come to do this work. I was joking with Meena that if Carlton comes, Carlton does the work. If Carlton does it, I'll do it. Actually, that was a flippant comment to something that I know Carlton's commitment to the time and space. And I will be a part of that, stand in solidarity. And it is the politics that is stitching us. And then the family gets stitched. So I have a lot of hope for this work and the future. The sun will rise. No myopia, no negative legislative session can stop the sun from rising. And I look at that horizon.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So there's a question from the audience, and I know it's a very complex question, so I don't know if we can answer it, but maybe very simply. And it's a question from Greg Meyer, who says, "How can non-BIPOC people be a part of these conversations?" And he also adds, "Only through listening." But I just wanted to, because I feel like this is a big question for us, right? Like, how can they support these conversations? How can they be part of these conversations? Anybody want to take that question? And I know we have only 5 minutes left, and we want to.
It's an important question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many ways. I mean, there's so many conversations, right? I mean, Race Peace was a collaboration between Mugabe, which is me and my brother, two Black men, and at the time, Mondo Bizarro, which was two white men. We created a theater piece with other, people, Latino, Latinx artists, with white women, with Black women, Jewish people. It was a complex, multicultural conversation that included white people. I think the challenge for us has been, how do we have a conversation that doesn't center white people? And that's what this particular work has been about. And Race Peace came about because of an experience that we had collectively through experiencing the trauma of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and southern Mississippi, and trying to figure out how we could continue doing work together after witnessing how our communities were impacted by the hurricane, and not just the hurricane, but the man-made disaster that followed the hurricane. And how that is representative of the way that Blacks have been treated in those communities for generations. And so we developed a piece of work. Well, the first piece of work was Uprooted, the Katrina Project, which was a performance by many different artists. And we struggled in that work to have conversations that centered the experiences of Black people, that talked about race, that really laid bare what was happening. So artists from that group then develop Race Peace as a tool to have these conversations. There's many conversations to be a part of as a non-BIPOC person that is interested in advancing racial justice. There's an organization called Standing Up for Racial Justice, SURGE, and that's what they do. They organize white people to have these conversations. So look that up. Be a part of those conversations, because that will advance that's still working towards the advancement of the goals that we hold, even with the work that we're doing with River Souls.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carlton. That was really helpful. And I feel like, as we journey, we'll also figure out, these are resources that we should have on our website and so on, and really figure out how to put work so that we can bring everybody together to have these conversations, because these conversations are so important and so necessary. Brandy, any last words before we kind of come to a close?
I actually don't have any. I think you all have said, so many really beautiful and important pieces. So thank you for what you're bringing to this work. Thank you for us doing this together, for being willing and vulnerable. So thank you for allowing me to help facilitate this conversation.
Yes, thank you so much, Brandy, Carlton, Dipankar. It's been so beautiful to just do this with you, and really, I'm just so moved to be able to do this work, and so lucky. I just feel so lucky to be able to actually engage in this conversation and move our work forward, as well as have these much larger conversations that are, and not only United States based, but actually global, because what we're committed to is equity. And we want, and we want to have equity wherever we are. And so we are going to flow like the river. And at this point, we'll end this part, and we'll meet again very, very soon. So thank you. So I just want to thank. Yes. And I just want to also thank our team at Pangea. So I would love them to put on their, great. Thank you, Suzanne, Jenny, Thank you so much. It's so, you do such amazing work. They actually supported us through this whole thing. And also Molly, who was out there managing Facebook. So just thank you, Suzanne, Molly, and Jenny. And also a huge thanks to Maurice Turner, who is Carlton's brother, who is also part of our extended family, who actually, it was his music that you heard in the beginning, and who is very much part of our consciousness as we work. And we also want to thank our funders, the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Performance Network, and also Network of Ensemble Theatres, through whose support this work has actually gone forward for the last so many years. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank our audiences for being here with us.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.